Life shouldn't be hard. Life should be a fun-filled adventure every day. So now start joining up dots. Tap into your talents, your skills, your God-given gifts, and tell your boss, you don't deserve me. I'm out of here. It's time for you to smash that alarm clock and start getting the dream business and life you, well, of course, are dreaming of. Let's join your host, David Ralph, from the back of his garden in the UK, or wherever he might be today, with another jammed-packed episode of the #1 hit podcast, Join Up Dots.
Yes, hello there, good morning everybody, good morning and welcome to another episode of Join Up Dots. Absolute delight to be here and thank you for everybody for tuning in. Well, today's guest is one of the, we're doing a new thing on Join Up Dots. So we're, at the end, we always say, you know, when you've got more dots to join up. And we've realised that a lot of the guests haven't had the chance to join up more dots. And so we've been going through the archives and looking for the best guests that we had previously. And this guy certainly falls into that category. He appeared actually quite a few years ago now. It was episode 388 of the show, and it was back in 2015 to be exact. And the last time we spoke, he was living in the south of France as he worked with individuals and corporations across the globe to make them see the opportunities they have all around them, the opportunities that can bring wealth, success and enjoyment into their worlds. But is he now doing the same? Or like many entrepreneurs, was that just a stepping stone to where he now finds himself? Well, it seems that he has now strengthened and changed his focus as he now helps corporate clients find and develop winning teams in their organisations. So how did this guy, born and bred in Ireland, break free from the surrounding conditioning of what is possible for a young man in Ireland? And does he see the issues that he encounters with his clients the same across the world? Or is there a geographical reasons that hold them back from achieving what they want? And I guess the best question of all, do individuals have more or less the same obstacles as large corporate clients, except on a smaller scale? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up even more dots with the one and only Mr. John Murphy. Good morning, John. How are you?
David, it is great to be here. When you actually said it to me when we were organising this, that it was 2015 when I was last on the show, I thought to myself, no, David, he's, senility has kind of crept in and that's not the case. But you are right. Isn't it scary how time goes?
It is right, though. Senility has, you will find me wandering around my garden looking for yoghurt and wondering where my trousers are and all that, all the way through the day. But no, it blew me away when I saw 2015. And what blew me away, I kind of felt that you'd been on the show multiple times. And so I went down the archives and it was only one. So you had an impact on me, John. Right, I've got so much I want to talk to you about, so let's jump straight back. Okay, if you imagine your business now being absolutely as you want, a 10, last time we spoke, looking back, where was your business on the sort of scale? Was it 1, absolutely just doing what it was doing, or was it a 4 or a 5? How much have you improved over the last 6 years?
Well, I think it's a really good question, and I think it's interesting because if I go back to that time, I probably would have said that my business was around a 7 or 8, right? But if I look back on it now, I would actually score that differently and say that it was actually much more around a 5 or a 6. And that's with the benefit of hindsight, because I think that what's happened, over that period of time, is that I have got an awful lot kind of clearer on the proposition that I have, both for individuals and for companies. So I've got very, very clear on the proposition, but I've also got very, very clear on the type of clients, the sort of clients that I want to work with. So I think those two have been a very, very significant shift for me. So that once I became clear on those, because I would have been a little bit more generic in the sense of, kind of not really clear about the industry or not clear about the sort of clients they're looking for. Pretty much, kind of anybody who I kind of came across, had a conversation, if we engaged, then fine, we'd do it. But I found that having the clarity about the target market and the proposition just made everything else a lot simpler. in terms of what I do to attract those clients and what I do to actually retain those clients. So it just became a lot more focused. I would certainly score myself much higher today on the focus of the business. And, and I'm also glad to say that the business has grown quite significantly in that time, even through COVID, which we are still not out of. But, I would have to say that COVID did not have a negative impact upon my business. And I'm very grateful for that.
I reckon if I invite you back in 2028 and ask you the same question, you're going to say, oh, I think my business was a 5 or a 6. It's funny how businesses are never what we expect. We kind of find them by natural forces somehow. And I think that's one of the problems that newbies have. They kind of think that the first thing out the gate has to be the right thing. And I always say to everyone I work with, learn the mechanisms behind the scenes of online business and creating a business. Understand how to find your avatar and nurture. And then you've got options. It doesn't have to be right straight away, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I think that, let's be honest about it. When you start a business, I'm in business now 17 years. And when I go back 17 years ago, anybody who was upright and breathing and had a checkbook was a potential client.
Yes.
Right? So and that's because you just needed cash.
I went with drunk and loose morals as well. I took absolutely anyone.
So, so there's an element of, you need to actually, you need to feed and to eat, because that does help. And so there's an element of that you kind of do that. But then over a period of time, I think the biggest risk is that you start drifting. And you start drifting into areas that perhaps you shouldn't be drifting into. Your offer becomes a little bit elastic and you begin to stretch it to whatever somebody says to you. And I'd have to say, if I look back in it, any time, David, I have stepped out of my lane of what I'm really good at and said, oh yeah, I can do that. And I have made the mistake of doing that. I don't do it now, but I certainly did it years ago. And I know I can do that as well. I immediately did not deliver in the way that I wanted to deliver.
And would that have been sort of desperation, John? Would that have been like, there's another income stream there that I can just grab and bring in?
Well, there's an element of that, but I also think it's just trying to please people. People say, can you do this? I give you a very good example, right? One of the things that I remember being asked earlier on, my background, as you know, is in the corporate world, and I kind of came through the sales end. So I've managed big sales forces. And and then somebody said to me, well, could you do some work with our sales force? And of course I know how to run a sales force and I know how to manage a sales force, but that doesn't necessarily mean I know how to train a sales force. Right. And I would say, I'll do that because I wanted to please. I didn't want to disappoint. And also you were kind of saying there was a revenue opportunity. But I think it was more that I wanted to kind of get in and make sure that I was doing as much as I can for the client. But I actually found that doing that, I was actually doing myself and probably the client a disservice as well. Because, one thing is actually knowing how to actually, it's a bit like I can be a great salesman. It doesn't make me a great sales manager. Right. And in the same way, I can be a great sales manager. It doesn't mean that I'm very good at training sales managers. It's a very different job. So I think that, it is about being really clear and being specific about it and making sure that you stay within that lane. Now, if you decide to go, and it doesn't mean that you can't change direction, but do it very intentionally. Don't allow drift.
Is there a way past this, or do we all actually have to have our trousers pulled down and spanked by people that won't pay us anything and are just sucking us dry with our energy before we define? Can people really be that clear on their ideal customer at the beginning? Because I don't think they can they?
Well, I don't think they can, because I don't think that's where you start. But I think it evolves, and I think what you've got to do over a period of time, and I think you can do it in the early years. But I think it is a process of evolution. You find where you're most comfortable. You find where you can add most value, and that tends to be your sweet spot. So I think there is a bit of trial and error on it. I don't think that coming straight out of the gate that you will know it. But I think you've got to come to it fairly quickly. Otherwise, you would spend a lot of time, the great kind of marketing, who do I market to? Well, if I'm marketing to anybody and everybody, that's a huge challenge. But if I'm very specific about who I'm marketing to, I can be much more refined and specific about it and be very, very targeted to that. So I think you've got to get there fairly quickly, but I don't think anybody really is clear straight out of the gate. I agree with you, but I think you need to get there fairly fast.
Because I spend a lot of time talking to people, and I have a lot of people wanting to work with me. And I'll be totally transparent on the podcast, so these people can listen to this. If I get a feeling that I don't actually like them personally, I don't work with them. I spend a lot of time actually thinking to myself, would I like to be meeting this person every Friday for a period of weeks or whatever period it is? And if I think to myself, no, there's something about them, and it's normally a sort of unprofessional attitude somehow. If they are speaking to me in a car, that's one of the ones that I hate. Or if they're on a bus stop, or they haven't set out their environment to really focus in on the conversation. That's a big no-no to me. But I'm very spider sense now on the kind of people, because the last thing you want to do is look at your calendar on a Friday and think, oh my God, I'm talking to John Murphy. I'm talking to John Murphy again.
And, I think that's true, because I think also, at the end of the day, we can talk about the service we provide and all of that, but at the end of the day, it's a relationship, right? And the business is going to succeed based on the quality of the relationships that you have. And, and there are people that, in theory, you could say I could work with anybody. In practice, I can't, because if I don't actually have a relationship and we don't get on and there's a fit between us, you're either going to frustrate me, piss me off, or I will do the same to you, right? And so you do need to make sure that you've got that fit and that relationship. And I think that, you also come from, at the very beginning of your career, where you're kind of desperate to find any client. But over a period, as you build your client base, you become much more, you kind of refined about who it is that you actually want to do business with. And you begin to kind of say, okay, well, I can do business with that person. I can build a relationship, because, my relationship with clients goes on for a long time. So it helps if we like each other. So, there is getting that chemistry between you, because in the work that I do, there are times where I've got to have, tough conversations and challenging conversations with people. And, if we, really irritate the living daylights out of each other, that's not going to go terribly well.
So when did you start to pivot then? Because as I say, back on 2015, I listened to the podcast episode, and it was very much about individuals. And now you're working with corporates and teams, and there is a spin of your business. Was it just so gradual you didn't notice, or were you sitting on the side of your bed one morning, putting your socks on, thinking, this is the last time I'm going to do this?
Yeah, no, I think, because I've always kind of worked with individuals and teams, but I think that where the shift really came from was that I started to get very, very specific, and it probably would be around the 2015 time, where I began to get very specific in kind of what individuals and what sort of teams. Right? Because, I would have been a little bit all over the place in terms of the sort of people and the sort of teams that I would work. And I've discovered there are certain industries that, what I'm doing, I've begun to get deeper in some industries. In the pharmaceutical industry, for example, I do a lot of work in. So I understand that industry. I don't understand the technicalities of it, but I understand the culture of it and the way of behaving and the patterns of behavior in that. So I began to really narrow down the type of teams and the type of individuals that I want. And that was really, so I'm not saying it was a kind of road to Damascus. One day I woke up and it was a kind of a flash of inspiration. Over a period of time, you begin to kind of see, okay, this is where I'm making an impact. This is where I'm adding value. This is where I feel I can really contribute. And you just begin to hone what the work that you're doing to be more reflective of those people and those teams that you do. So it would have been evolving. And I think that, it's never a kind of one and done thing either, David. I think that, it's going to evolve over a period of time. And I can even see now where, if I go back even kind of 2 years ago, that, the type of work I'm doing with teams is slightly different today than it would have been, 2 years ago, where it would have been very much in the kind of the team development box. Now it is that, but it would also be very much around, plugging the gap between strategy and execution. So it's always evolving and it's always changing. And I think you've got to be, one of the things that I would certainly say to anybody is that you've got to be very intentional about the changing, and you've got to kind of be, always looking, saying, well, how can I pivot? How can I get better? How can I be more specific? How can I add, where do I add more value? And just continuously challenging yourself. And I think, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and was actually on my own podcast, and he was saying that it's about learning every day, and I think that that's so true, that we've got to be continuously learning, and the more we learn, the more we can add value, and then you actually just begin to get much more specific about the areas in which you add value. Does that make sense to you?
It makes total sense, and we're going to do a deep dive on that part after we listen to Oprah.
The way through the challenge is to get still and ask yourself, what is the next right move? Not think about, I got all of this stuff. What is the next right move? And then from that space, make the next right move and the next right move. And not to be overwhelmed by it, because your life is bigger than that one moment. You're not defined by what somebody says is a failure for you, because failure is just there to point you in a different direction.
Now, I was talking to a guy the other day, and a lovely guy from Oklahoma, and he connected with me about 3 years ago, and I didn't remember, to be honest. And he said, yeah, you was doing a webinar or some course, and I was part of the group. And he connected again. I said, so what have you done since that last time, And he said, I've done a Facebook course, I've done this course, I've done that course. And he was doing a course on everything. And I said to him, so which one did you want to get brilliant at? Which one did you really want to focus in on? And how would you then take that knowledge to a specific marketplace to really help them? And I see that a lot, that people that connect with me are on this kind of generic spread of everything, where they're not actually saying, okay, I enjoy doing this, let me become the expert at helping small coffee shops in the south of France to getting very, very accurate and specific. They just want to sort of know a bit of everything. And it is that deep dive on knowledge that increases your value. And then that value increases your monetary value as well, what you can charge, don't you?
It is, but I think that gaining knowledge just for knowledge's sake is not terribly useful. For all of us, there's a finite amount of time that we all have that we're going to dedicate to our knowledge, and I think that it's we're all and I think that guys like you and I, David, we can be very tempted by shiny new toys and chasing after shiny new toys, and I think that's probably true of you too, isn't it, David?
No, I don't think it is, actually. I think it was,
right.
Or at least, yes, it is, but I'm aware of it, so it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and so I think that would be an inclination, and I think that guys like you and I have got to be wary of that inclination, because we see something, that'll be something be interesting to go, and we go and do it. As you, with a bit of maturity and a bit of experience, you begin to say, okay, well, that'd be nice to do, but really it's not really applicable. I mean, it might be wonderful for me to know how to grow gardenias in the garden, but I'm never going to bloody do it, right? Be honest about it, right? I might have a flash or a moment where I think it's brilliant, but I mean, there are areas within my own business that you kind of say, okay, I need to educate myself in these certain areas, and they're the things that I actually go and I would learn more about. And I think we've got to have that attitude that the guy I was talking to, you've got to have that attitude of continuous learning. But I think learning that we can apply and that we can bring and that adds value to the clients that we're dealing with, that's where it makes it worthwhile. I mean, God knows there is the plethora of courses that you can go on, and every day we get inundated with the offer of more. You could spend your life doing courses, but you've actually got to take that knowledge and apply it to the benefit of your clients and the benefit of your business. So make sure that what you're doing is relevant.
I think that is a very, very wise advice as well, because looking back on everything, I don't know if you was the same. I think that I got involved with the kind of the sales side before the value, looking back on it. So it was all about doing sales funnels and webinars and email marketing. And in the early days, it didn't really convert because I didn't have anything strong enough or defined enough that people actually wanted or they understood. And it was very easy for us to say, oh, I've got this and I've got that. It's really going to help you. But it's not as good as somebody already looking for that because they know it's a need in their life. And one of the things that I talk to people a lot about is this thing about starting a business based on passion. And I think people are starting it from a kind of inward look at their own passion instead of looking for problems out there and then going, right, that problem, no idea, and I think I'll be bored with it. That one, no idea. That one, oh, I think I could bring something to that. What can I bring to it? And actually kind of trying to blend the passion with the problem or the solution. Did you see that as well? People are almost kind of mystical on this passion business.
Yeah, I do, and I, I'm always wary. If somebody says, "Oh, work at your hobby, and you'll never work a day in your life." I think that's rubbish, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. But because I think that the danger is, I can work at something that I'm fascinated about, but if nobody else needs it, well, then I don't have anyone to sell it to, right? And if I'm not actually, I always remember being told years and years ago when I was a kind of a starting out salesperson, selling insurance door to door, which was interesting. And but I remember being told the sale is in the fact find, and being drummed into me, and that is still true. If I'm talking to somebody and I'm kind of figuring out what are the challenges they have, they are not blindly interested in what I do, right? But what they are interested is in finding solutions to their problems. So if I'm identifying what their problems are, and if I have a solution to some of their problems, well then fine, we can have a conversation, but maybe I don't have a solution. So then we just have a nice conversation and you move on. But at the end of the day, if I've got to understand what their pain point is and what their issue is and what their challenge is, and I think then do that. But then building your business on the back of kind of knowing the pain point that you actually solve and then growing to love what you do. So I think the growing to love it comes after the identification of it. And I think that as you build it, it's got to be something you like, it's got to be something you enjoy, but you'll grow to love it if you get good at it, you're getting results from it, that increases your love for it. But I think trying to do it the other way around, I think is a recipe for disaster. I know somebody, and it always sticks in my mind, I know somebody whose hobby was airplanes and flying, right? And he decided to start an airline and he lost everything. So he was a classic example of somebody who followed his hobby but didn't actually understand the totality of the business.
Yeah, it's fascinating with business because even if you do love it, because generally my business I love, but there are times when I think, oh God, I can't be bothered. It's just getting me down. And after a while, once you've been in it for so long, you realise that it's a season you've just got to go through. And there's lessons waiting to be told to you. You've just got to almost step away from it. How do you deal with that, John, when you actually start to get bored with your own business and that passion that we're talking about isn't there firing like it was maybe 3 or 4 months previous?
Yeah, because I mean that's just human nature, isn't it? I mean that's just part and parcel of it. And also, I mean, I love my business, but do I love every single part of the business? No, there are bits about the administration and the processing and the accounts I hate. Well, I really don't like them, right?
I've spent all week doing VAT and receipts and stuff for multiple businesses, and yeah, you just have to suck it up.
You do. And so, I mean, it's not everything that you love. But to me, when I actually do feel, and it's also, I think it's interesting, when you feel that way, you've got to really go in and check with yourself. Why is it that I'm feeling that way? Maybe you're feeling tired. Maybe you haven't had a break. Maybe you've just you're just, the energy is low, and understanding what it is. But to me, my way of actually kind of re-engaging is to connect to short-term goals. So, if I'm feeling, pissed off on a Monday morning, say, okay, well, what would actually make today, or what would make this week successful? And kind of setting something for myself that I say, okay, well, that would engage me. And then that just gets stuck, and then getting stuck into action. Because, the other thing that I've learned, and this is also something that you will have read Seth Godin stuff quite a lot, and he's very big on it about trust the process and stay with the process, and don't get hung up on the outcomes. And I think that if you get in and get engaged and you're doing the steps, you actually build the excitement and you build the adrenaline. I think if you're sitting waiting for the adrenaline to suddenly pump through your veins, or you're waiting for inspiration to hit you, I think that you'll be waiting. I also remember a very good friend of mine is a successful author, and I remember saying, and very prolific and very successful, but I remember saying to her, and God, it must be incredible. You must get such blasts of inspiration to write all the books. And she said, no, hold on a second. She said, I sit down at my computer every day at 7 o'clock and I do not get up for 5 hours. Right? I said, that's how I write the books. There are days I will write one sentence. Right? There are days I will look blankly at the screen. But it is the process of getting up and being there at 7 o'clock every single morning, or 5 mornings a week, or whatever she does. And said, that's the process. That's how eventually it comes. But said, if I don't do it, if I wait for this kind of bolt of inspiration, said, I wouldn't have produced one book.
I love this because I've only just been thinking about this myself. One of the things that I've started doing over the last few months, because let's go back in time. 2020, whenever you're listening to this, was a weird year. And most of us got told that we had to stay indoors and we couldn't go out. And for a period, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. It was like the weight off. It was just like everything was relaxed and we all sat at home in the garden and the weather was wonderful and stuff. But then I couldn't kick myself back into going again. It was like my body had slowed down. I'd walked away from my business and I didn't really want to sort of get back into it. And so when you talk about, the author, what we're basically saying is it's the turning up. It's this setting your scene to turn up. And one of the things I realised that I was doing was the first breath that I was aware of when I woke up in the morning. I would do right, let's go. And I said it to myself mentally, let's go, threw myself out of the bed, and then I came up to the office, started recording podcasts or whatever. But I actually had to kickstart myself to actually want to do it again. And sometimes I would come home after 8 hours and I'd done nothing. But other days, I'd got 8 or 10 days worth of stuff come here. And I think that's one of the issues that people think as well, that they can build businesses by doing 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. But it's much better to just say, right, Monday evening is going to be 3 hours of consistent more than just trying to do what you can whenever. Did you think so? It's the setting the scene that gets the body and the business going.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, and we would have spoken about it in 2015, because I'm still a great believer in daily rituals, right? And what daily rituals do is, is that, they set up your day and they close down your day. And I think that those things are really helpful. And even, I mean, I've got my daily rituals that I do, and there are some days I go, oh, God, I just don't feel like it, right? I really do not feel like doing it, whatever it might be, right? Whether it's the meditating, whether it is the exercise, whether it's the journaling, whatever it is, right? I kind of, oh God, but it is just the act of doing it and pushing myself to do it and not letting myself off the hook. That helps to get yourself going, but it is about getting momentum. If in the same way that I said, because I'm such a great believer in rituals, if I just kind of tumble out of bed and then I just, rock into the office at some stage, I'm still mentally half in the bedroom, half in the shower, or half at breakfast, or whatever it might be. I'm not focused. But whereas if I have rituals that kind of separate and get me into the working day, then I've given myself momentum, and it's momentum that carries you through. Right? We can't expect every day to be full of the, joie de vivre and excitement and, full of beans and flying on all cylinders, because we're just human beings. But we've got to give ourselves the best chance of performing at our best every day. And I think, personally, I just think daily rituals play an awfully big part in that.
Yeah, I agree totally. I was watching a TEDx talk the other day, and he was talking about mindset and how some people go, "Oh, it's all right for you. You know, you've got great willpower, and you can, you've just got it in spades." And this guy was saying that actually we all have exactly the same, but it's how we allocate it. And some people will get up and imagine that bucket being full first thing in the morning. They will use it to do the things that they don't want to do first. And other people will just kind of give little bits of it away through the day. And so when they get home, they can't be bothered because the bucket's empty, And you've got to look at that and you've got to say, yeah, we've all got the same ability to focus ourselves and channel those energies. But what time of day is it right? I remember being in corporate land, and we used to have some guys that would turn up at 4:00 in the morning, and they were ready to go. They were firing. Other people would turn up at 3:00 in the afternoon. They still looked like they were ready for bed, because their body was not right for that sort of time. And with the willpower and the rituals, it is, once again, it's about sort of knowing yourself and knowing, should I be doing this work late at night, or should I be doing it first thing in the morning? Should I be doing it at lunchtime? What I kind of do, John, now is I will do half hour really, really focused work, and then I go off. And I walk out of the office and I might go, I don't know, mow the lawn or something, or potter around. And then I come back and I do another half hour. And I find at the end of the day, I've done so much because all those little half hours were focused bursts of work instead of, Messenger pinged up, what's on YouTube, let's look at the football results and all the kind of things that sort of take us away. Distractions are a thing of the past because you don't give them a chance to creep into your life.
Yeah, I think that, and of course it's a huge challenge because we've all got, tools all around us that are, we can go down rabbit holes in any one of them, whether that's social media or an article or a TED talk or whatever it might be, and take us away. So, there's no challenge in being busy. That's not a challenge. The challenge is in being effective and getting the things done that you need to do. And that just requires a certain amount of discipline. And I don't believe, to go back to your point about willpower, David, I don't think that, anybody has got, a quota of willpower more than anybody else. But I do think it's about how you exercise that muscle and how intentional you are about it. And it's a bit like, what you give your energy to. We all have, one of the things that, for all of us is that, thoughts just kind of float in and out of our head, right? It's what we give energy to. If I get a negative thought in my head and I give energy to it, well, that's going to drag me down. But I have a choice. Do I give energy to it, or do I actually try to move it along and just let it float away? It is what we give energy to, and that's what determines, what we focus in on. Because, what I think about determines my behaviors, which determine my actions, which determine my results. And you've got to be really clear that I know it's not easy. For example, meditating. I meditate. Would I say that's right for everybody? No, you got to figure out what's right for you. But one of my big challenges in meditating is that I used to think that meditating was that I had to have a blank mind, and I discovered, that's impossible, right? Well, it certainly was impossible for me. And then I realized, stop beating myself up. Just actually go through the process of it and allow it. But it's the discipline of actually turning up to do it. That's what makes the difference. It's not kind of saying, well, was I a good meditator or not so good a meditator? It's just turning up to do it. And that's what builds the muscle. And in the same way, it's about being clear about your priorities, but it's also being clear about your purpose. And I do want to say that, David, I think it's a big thing, people to be really, really clear about their own purpose, both in their work and in their lives, what it is they're actually there for, because that's the context for everything. And I think that is something. I had no idea what my purpose was when I started my business. That just developed over the period of time, and it changes depending on the seasons of my life. But, I think it is being really clear about your purpose, because that is the context for all the decisions that you make.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's on the wider sense of purpose, it's how you want your business to blend in with your lifestyle. Every decision that I make is, can I turn this off? Can I walk away from this? Is this going to trap me? am I then going to be doing this every Wednesday afternoon forever, you know? And I always look at everything to think, right, can I just go off for 3 months, turn off my business and then bring it back on? Will it still operate? Now, when I started, that wasn't even part of the question. It was, you know, you just had to do it. And it didn't matter when somebody wanted to speak to me, I would be there. But now it's very much about put my mask on first. Now, it's interesting you're talking about meditation, because when we started Join Up Dots, everyone was talking about meditation. I used to think, oh, what a load of old rubbish. Really, you know, just get on with it, you know, because when I was in corporate land, there wasn't any talk about meditation. You know, there was a talk about having a pint after work, but there was no talk about, you know, all that kind of stuff. But in entrepreneur world, it was very much a part of the routine. And I didn't get it. But now I do get it. I get it totally, because it is the classic case of setting your inner body to achieve or dominate your exterior. So one of the things that I do every morning, I do a Wim Hof breathing exercise where I do hold my breath for 1.5 minutes, then 2.5 minutes, and 3.5 minutes, and 4.5 minutes until I black out. And every single morning I wake up and I think, screw this, I can't be bothered. You know, I really can't. And then I think, no, do it. And once I've done it, it's only 15, 20 minutes. I feel great afterwards and I feel really pleased. But I don't think I've had one morning since Christmas, really, that I haven't woken up and thought, oh, God, no, I'll skip it today. But I know that once you skip and you break that chain, then things start to crumble. It is that, once again, it's that showing up every single day, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I think it just is the discipline, because, you know, I mean, in the same way, it doesn't matter whether it's the Wim Hof, which I think is great, by the way, or meditating, or going for a run, or whatever it might be, you always feel better afterwards. That is the one thing that's for sure and for certain. No matter how you feel going into it, you are going to feel better afterwards. And I think that to me is always kind of say, okay, well, because I mean, there are days I get up and I said, I don't feel like meditating, but I still will push myself to do it. But I always feel better afterwards. So it does work, and I think it is that discipline of, you know, of being there and trusting the process, as Seth Godin was saying, and not to get too fixated on the outcome, but stick with the process. Know the things that work for you and actually just do that. And I always think that, you know, athletes, particularly high performing athletes, are great examples of it, you know, in terms of, you know, they know what works, and they, you know, it is the work, you know, the glory they get in the Olympic medals or whatever, the world records or whatever it might be, they're the moments, right? But it's the work they do out of sight of everybody that actually determines the winning of the medal.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was watching that Emma Raducanu, and who won the US Open in 2021. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. And I never watched women's tennis, but I was laying in bed. I had my little tablet by the side. I thought, I'll just watch it. It'd be over in half hour. I thought, you know, this thing. And there was one moment where she hit a ball across the net and she'd gone 2-love up. And then the other lady sort of come into it, and she hit the ball and she turned round and she had Eye of the Tiger in her eyes. It was a look like, no matter what happens, I'm going to win this. I am not going to give it. And I don't think I've seen anybody other than Rocky, you know, have that kind of look in the eye of that. This is all the years that I've been hitting this ball leading up to this moment. I can't waste it. And when I saw that, I thought to myself,
she was fantastic. Yeah.
I thought to myself, how many times in building our business do we have that same eye of the tiger? And I think it's very, very few. We kind of let things slide somehow. But certainly that, because it was all or nothing, she had to bring that to her game.
Yeah, I thought the other very interesting thing just on that match, because I watched the same match, and I thought the very interesting thing was when she had the stumble and she cut her knee, right, and they had to take the break. Now, it was upsetting for both of them when she had to take the break to get bandaged, because you can't continue playing tennis if you're bleeding, and she was getting the bandage put on, and as she was at break point down, right, a really critical moment, and I remember hearing the commentator saying at the time, I hope she sticks to her process. She's got a process for being in this situation, and not react to the moment, but stick to the process. And she came out and she did not drop her serve, right? And she actually won that game. And I just thought that was actually such a great comment. You know what it takes to actually build the business. You know what it takes to be successful. Even, in a moment of adversity or when you're under pressure or under stress, know what it takes and do the basics, do the fundamentals right, and actually keep doing the fundamentals right. And I thought that was a really good example of it.
What is your fundamental then? Because I know without a doubt mine is building relationships. It's without a doubt. I spend so many hours speaking to people that I never hear from again, just trying to help them and get them going. And people say to me, oh, do you charge? I go, no, it's all free. I do it for them, because I know that's part of my business. What is your fundamentals, do you think?
Well, there'd be a couple. I mean, relationships, at the end of the day, relationships, that's what all businesses are built on. So, I mean, building quality relationships and ensuring that you are continuing to build relationships, because I deal with a lot of large organizations, so it's about building relationships in those organizations. But the other thing that would be very fundamental to me also, David, would be I'm a real stickler for planning and being clear about what it is that I'm actually looking to do, what it is what are the inputs that I'm going to give. And I'll be very, very clear. I tend to kind of break my year from kind of annual goals down to 90-day goals, and then I actually work in 2-week cycles. And that really is very fundamental to me in terms of how I work. It fits me, it works for me, but it ensures that I'm keeping focus on the important things over a 2-week period and not losing sight of them. So that would be very, very fundamental to me as well. So it's the planning and the execution and the relationships. They would, I'd say, to me, will be the fundamentals.
Mine is, without a doubt as well, the energy. When the energy is going and I'm starting to get bored, even if something's very lucrative, I stop and I leave it and I go off. I don't want any part of my business to be drab. I want to bring my A game to whatever I do. And I used to do a lot of podcast training and coaching. Don't do that at all now. I just got fed up with it and I just thought I can't be bothered. And then I went on to something else. And so my kind of energy, that's my key thing. How do I keep myself topped up and excited? Because I know that excitement then brings the best value to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think you've got to figure out what are the things that drain you and what are the things that fill you up. and then focus on kind of spending the majority of your time on the things that fill you up, because that gives you more energy and it kind of keeps on. It's not, energy is not a finite thing. So we can build more energy, we create more energy. And I think it is just focusing on those things that really fill you up. I mean, it's a bit like, we all know people that fill us up. And by the same token, we know people that drain you, right? So avoid the people who drain you because they're not any good for you, right? And focus on spending time with the people that fill you up. And in the same way in your business, figure out the things, which I've done in my business. I kind of say the things that I don't like doing, and I've mentioned some of them, but I pretty much have people who look after those for me. Right now, it doesn't mean that I do nothing in them, but I don't do the kind of the heavy lifting with them. I have people who actually do those things for me. So it means that it frees me up to focus on the things that I add value to, and two, that actually, I really enjoy and that energize me.
Let's listen to Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Now, are the dots getting clearer? Certainly since the last time we spoke 6 years ago, are they sort of more pronounced as stepping stones going forward? Have you got clarity where those dots are leading?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, I think that if I was looking back and kind of saying, okay, well, what have I learned from that period of time? I think that there would be a couple of things. I think one is taking much more care about the present would be one thing, right? And also making sure that for everything that I'm doing right now, I'm doing it to the best of my ability. and I'm also going to enjoy it, because I would have spent, and it's probably true right through my life and my career, I spent too much time thinking about the future, what could go wrong very often, what might it be, so that I was spending a lot of time my head in the future. And I really have tried very hard, and I succeed most of the time, to actually bring much more back to the present and focusing on what I'm doing. And it kind of plays back to what I was saying about focusing on the process. But I think the other thing is that, because it's, not everything is about the future, but it's also about enjoying it and having fun with it and enjoying the journey. And I think it is about understanding what brings you joy, and depending on your season of life, it's going to be somewhat different. But I think that it's the attitude of a continuous learner. Being curious, David, is something that I've learned to be more and more curious as I get older. And I think sometimes we're inclined to get less curious as we get older. And I really work hard at just making sure that I'm staying more curious, because I think that makes me want to learn more. It makes me interested about different things. So I really work at being more curious. And also I think, really focusing on making sure that I've got a good process in place, and that I really work on the process to actually get the outcome. And I think it's just to trust the process and trust myself. But it's not to be projecting so much into the future, but taking care of now an awful lot better and seeing where that takes me. Because, in a sense, I didn't set out absolutely clearly to be where I am today. But over a period of time, I've developed and changed and evolved it to be what it is today. And I've no doubt I'll just continue doing that, because, my business, your business, in 3 years' time is not going to be identical to what it is now. Do I know exactly what it's going to be like? No, I don't. But I'm going to stay curious. I'm going to spend my time looking. I'm going to spend my time listening. And I'm going to spend my time learning to make sure that I'm changing it and evolving it as I go.
But does it feel good at the moment?
Oh yeah, it's great. I've got to be very honest. It's life is good. I've been, we're still in COVID as we record this, but we're 18 months into it, and and I feel that I've been very blessed in the sense that the business and the work that I do has flourished in that time. It has not taken a backward step at all. In fact, it's grown, and I'm very grateful for that. And I also appreciate that I'm very fortunate to be in that, because if I was in other industries, I wouldn't be saying that. So I do appreciate, and I'm grateful for where I am. So yes, I love what I'm blessed to kind of do something that I love what I'm doing. I love the whole process of it. I love the engagement. I love the fact that it's about, the environment in which we're operating in is changing, so rapidly. Even COVID has contributed to a very significant way to that change, because so you're continuously adopting, and it's kind of the excitement of kind of, just that adaptation and adopting and evolving the business to be that. So yeah, it's great fun. I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed, and I don't take it for granted.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Well, this is the part of the journey that we've been leading up to. This is something that you did before that we called a sermon on the mic, when we're going to send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. But the second time, people, they don't get to choose who they get to speak to. We want you to give the advice to the John Murphy that appeared on the show back in 2015. And if you could go back in time and give him some advice, what would it be? Well, we're going to find out, because I'm going to play the music, and when it fades, it's your time to talk. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
I think so. We would be touching on some of the things that I've said. I think that one of the things would be to say to the person of 2015, I probably had a much more a fixed view of what I was doing and the work I was doing with clients. And I would say, don't be so fixed. Listen more. Listen to what people are saying. Listen to what the challenges are. Listen to what their issues are. And listen to what is concerning them. And listen to what is actually getting in the way. And instead of being, as I think I would have been, a bit more prescriptive about what I was doing, say, okay, let's co-create. And let's co-create a response, and let's co-create a solution to the problem that you're there. So I think I would be more curious, more open, listening a lot more, and collaborating with the client to co-create the solution rather than, listen, here's what I offer, here's what I do, kind of one size fits all. I think that would be a very, very big part of it. I think the other thing would be, just to always challenge where am I adding value, not what am I actually going to do, but where do I actually add value? And that's a different question. And how do I actually bring that value to them so that they can take it and do something with it? Again, I would have thought that I would be a bit prescriptive. And the other thing that I've mentioned is being really clear and learning and listening and kind of observing where your sweet spot is, to understand where it is and focus in on doing that. But again, it also would be, be really, really clear about the process of your work and your business. What are the processes that you need to have in place? Because I would have paid very little attention to processes. And that would be kind of my nature, not to pay attention to it, David. And I learned the hard way to actually pay a lot of attention to the process, because once you actually bring people on, it's mapping out those processes. The problem if you don't actually do it, all the time, is that then somebody leaves and they walk away with the processes in their head, and then somebody comes in and you've got to start from scratch again. And I would certainly say in every business there are processes. Map them out. Keep them, guard them, update them, and really, really make sure they are, because it will save you so much time as you bring people on, and you don't have to kind of go back and repeat everything again and explain everything from day one. You can say, listen, there's the process, there's the videos, there's the maps, whatever they are. Go and look at those questions, then we can talk about it. But I'm not getting into training people again. So I think there would be some things like that. But I also think is just not being as rigid in terms of what I do, right? And not being so fascinated about what I do, but being much more fascinated about how can I bring a solution to the client's issues and challenges that I'm hearing, and how can I shape what I do best to actually suit that. I think I would have been a lot more prescriptive about what I was doing. So there'd be a couple of things that I would read. And I think also to not be, I think to actually just have more fun along the way, and not perhaps to take myself as seriously.
Yeah, I agree with that last one. I think fun. If you're not having fun in what you're doing, then you're doing something wrong. Really, I think that's the bottom line. Well, John, it's been an absolute delight to have you on the show again. What's the number one best way that our audience who's been listening can connect with you?
Well, the best way you can go to, good luck searching for John Murphy in a telephone directory. That's always going to be fun. But the best way to do it is to go to my website, johnmurphyinternational.com. They can find me there. They can also find me on LinkedIn. But probably the quickest and easiest way is to go to johnmurphyinternational.com, and then they can link in with me there.
Do they actually have telephone directories anymore? Have I gone back in time? Do they exist?
I'm probably dating myself now by saying that, David, because they don't have it. But I think you get my gist.
I get your gist because I'm old as well, John. Well, John, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. Please come back again when you've got even more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our past, it's the best way to build our future. So, John Murphy, I'll see you in 2028. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There we go, sir. All done and dusted. Mr. John Murphy. So first came on the show back in 2015, and it really didn't feel like it was 6 or 7 years since we last had a conversation, but it's a business, and a business thrives when it's vibrant and it starts moving and it's changing, and you've got to be aware of that when you're building a business. You've got to look at your own energies, you've got to look at the energies of your clients, you've got to look at the changing trends, and we've seen it many times with companies that refuse to change and say, this is it, we've got our market share, and they die. So if you're thinking of building something, you've got to look at yourself as much as the business and work hand in hand, and that is the way that success comes. For anybody who wants to kickstart their own business and get going, you can always book some time with me, absolutely free of charge. We go through the format of business, we try to get the idea for you to kickstart. That's free on the Join Up Dots website. But for everybody else who just likes listening, I hope I have you again. Until next time, look after yourselves. Cheers. See ya. Bye-bye.
That's the end of Join Up Dots. You've heard the conversation. Now it's time for you to start taking massive action. Create your future, create your life. It's the only life you've got. We'll be back again real soon. Join Up Dots, Join Up Dots, Join Up Dots, Join Up Dots. Join Up Dots.